This is World Awakenings, the fast track to enlightenment with your host, Carl Gruber. World Awakenings is a podcast dedicated to opening your mind, your heart, and your eyes to the fact that the world's population is now, more than ever, awakening to all things spiritual, metaphysical, and enlightening, and just how they play an all-important role in our daily life. So join Carl on this enlightening experience as he interviews metaphysical and spiritual experts to discuss, debate, and delve deeply into the hows and whys of this worldwide awakening. We welcome you to the World Awakenings podcast. Before we start, we'd like to tell you about a special ebook written by the show's host, Carl Gruber. The 3 Pillars, a simple 3-step process to manifest positive and permanent change in your life. The concise 32-page 3 Pillars ebook will teach you how to become a successful and consistent co-creator of your life path with the law of attraction. Yes, you can manifest the life you truly desire, and the ebook is absolutely free. Simply go to Carl's website, carlgruberlifecoach.com. That's KARLGRUBER lifecoach.com. Click on the header title About Me and get the free download today. Carl Gruber's free ebook, The 3 Pillars, will positively change your life.
Thank you for joining us here on this podcast, World Awakenings, the fast track to enlightenment. For 4 years now, this show has and continues to pursue a deeper understanding and knowing of all things spiritual, metaphysical, and enlightening, all in pursuit of going beyond the chaos, attack, lack, judgment, and brutality of our ego-driven world. As we seek the answer to the exclamation, there has got to be something better than this. Yes. And that is why we have so many wonderful, knowledgeable teachers, authors, and masters on this show to help us find that something better. Before we head off to meet today's featured guest, please take a moment to click that ever-important subscribe button below to help keep this show going and so you never, ever miss a single episode. Dr. Susan Corso is a metaphysician. She has had a spiritual consulting practice for 40 years, an expert on managing the human energy system through work with the chakras. She holds that truth that all beings have innate, indestructible integrity. That sounds awesome. She is the former head of spiritual and energy medicine at Visions Healthcare in Boston and is a gifted medical intuitive and practicing using the chakra system consciously. And she's also written more than 30 books, both fiction and nonfiction, including her classic God's Dictionary, and now the 8-volume series called Energy Integrity. She is also the founder of I Ampersand, a spiritual community dedicated to creating a world that works for everyone. Well, here you are. Welcome, Susan.
Thank you very much, Carl. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited ever since you were kind enough to send me a message and interested in being on the show. But I'm going to dive into this because I love my viewers and listeners to find out something about my guests. So after reading your bio, I have to say that you've been through a hell of a lot of trauma, and you've turned out all right. Can you tell us about those earlier years of your life?
Well, I don't know if this is your experience of your own spiritual growth, but when things are hunky-dory, mostly human beings like to take responsibility for that themselves. It's when things are bad that you go, I might need some help here. And you start to look sort of, well, maybe outside yourself, but often more inside yourself at, what's causing this? And essentially, my dad was killed in a plane crash when I was 5.
Wow.
And that was a T in the road, a complete T in the road. Now, a T in the road means that you got to choose. You're going to go one way or you're going to go the other way. And what happened for me was, it was the early 60s. Women like my mother were of value because of who they were married to, not because of accomplishments on their own. That just wasn't the case. My mother married 3 alcoholics in a row. Well, believe you me, that's a learning curve.
Wow.
And I had 3 younger brothers who needed protecting from those men all the time. And so I basically, from age 5 on, was an adult. In fact, I would tell you at 64 that I am younger than I was when I was 5.
Wow. Yeah.
Younger hearted, brighter, more positive about life. So I very early on had to find resources that a person who's 5 shouldn't have to find. And in fact, most 5-year-olds can't access those kind of resources, right? I was supremely lucky. I had a grandmother who was intuitive. She taught me how to use my intuition. And believe you me, it was wide open from the time, because I was hyper vigilant. I didn't know who was going to come through the door at the end of the day and how much whoever it was going to drink before they got there. So I was on guard. It taught me a whole lot. I learned about codependency. I learned about alcoholism. So finally, when I got to be a grown-up and went through some of my own trauma, like, and this is dramatic, forewarned please, I lost a son the day he was born. And ow. And that was finally when I went straight to headquarters. Do not pass go. No mediators, no priests, no rabbis, no imams, no nothing. I said, excuse me, God, children don't die before their parents. Wrong. Well, my child did die. And I talk about a T in the road. Wow. So I had to dig deeper than I knew I even had. After about 9 months, I realized I wasn't healing. And one day I was sitting in meditation and this woman showed up in my third eye and she said, hi. I said, hi. She said, I'm Mary. I said, hi, Mary. No idea, right? She finally said, Jesus, Mom? What? I was a nice Jewish girl. What? And then she vanished. Well, every single day for 9 months, she checked on me. Never said a word. Came into my meditation every single day for 9 months. At the end of 9 months, she said to me, do you want to know how I did it? And I knew immediately what she meant, how she gave up her son. I said, yes, I want to know. And she said the words that changed my whole life. She said, I gave him away. 4 words. I gave him away. And that day, I gave away my son, whose name was Isaac. And we named him Isaac because Isaac means she laughed in Hebrew, because I wanted there to be joy from his life. And I gave Isaac back to divinity. And I healed. And I went to work for the Blessed Virgin Mary. She saved me from a trajectory that I could not see how to stop, because the grief was overwhelming. Now, mind you, I've been much younger and started with a whole lot of grief. My dad's death. Well, at 5, in 1963, at age 5, they say things like, Daddy's not coming to your birthday party. Not, your father is dead. Dr. Spock didn't believe in telling children those sorts of truths, right? That he thought children couldn't deal with that. Well, wow, I had a bucket of grief that I fell into when my son died.
Oh, I was going to say at 5. Wow.
No, When my son died, though, I realized that there was a line of grief all the way back in my family.
Mm-hmm.
Interestingly, here's kind of a woo thing. All of the women on my mother's side of the family lost their firstborn child.
Oh.
Every single one that I could find. My mother, grandmother, great-grandmother, her mother, all the way back. I thought, wow, okay, let's stop this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that was my motivation for getting well. I went back to God. I said, listen, nope. We don't have to lose our firstborn sons or daughters anymore. No, the buck stops here. Well, it did. My niece had a beautiful baby girl not months later, and she's graduating from college now. So I did something right.
Yeah, you cleared the family Akashic records, huh?
I did, and not even understanding what that was, that I was doing ancestral healing. I had no idea. I just was like with my hands on my hips screeching at God, no. Well, when you're that clear, things get clear, right? That's what happens.
I have a couple of young friends who have also lost a child, just a few days after having delivered him. And so I understand, just being around them. I don't have any kids, but being around them, the grief seems to stay there with them. And if they could meet somebody like you to help them clear that would be. And as Mary said, give them away.
By the time. It's interesting, a grieving process often happens in 9-month increments in human beings. So you do your grieving, and then at the 9-month mark, it tends to get worse for a little while, and then it gets better, and then at the 18-month mark, it gets worse and then gets better. It's, of course, the human gestation period.
Yes.
Which makes sense to me, totally. But by the time you're 9 months into a grieving process and you don't feel any different than you did on day 2, that's when, okay, it's time to deal with this. And I will be honest with you, Carl, the grief of losing a child definitely turns from a scab into a scar, like human healing does, but different things can activate it unexpectedly. Here's a wild story. 6 years after Isaac was born and died, I was in Scottsdale, Arizona, on a terribly hot day in August, running errands. It was go to the post office, go to the dry cleaner, go to the bank, go blah, 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 all of it, all in one day, right? So I'm jamming around, and every once in a while, I kept getting hit with this wave of sadness. Like, that seemed to, I was not waiting a long time in traffic, and it wasn't crazy busy, and I couldn't come to realize a few days later that it was the first day of school. And that would have been
almost subconsciously
that I was counting. That would have been my Isaac's first day of kindergarten.
Wow.
I was driving on local streets through school zones. You know how when you're driving in a school zone, you have to slow down really slow. That's what was making the waves of sadness. Now, if somebody had said to me, even 2 weeks earlier, you're going to be sad on the first day of school, I just said, what are you, silly? Don't be ridiculous. It wiped me out for 2 days until I figured it out. So that kind of grief will nab you, but then you just remember the love. Eventually, you just remember the love. And one of the distinctions I make out of this experience for myself is I say to people, I'm a mother, but I'm not a parent, which is a different job. I had a baby. I have the stretch marks to prove it. I know what that is, and I'm not a parent. Now, do I end up parenting the clients that I have worked with over 40 years and helping bits of them to grow up? Of course. That's where I put that mothering energy, and happily.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. What an incredible story you have, and it's hey, it's just beginning. You got more to go here.
Oh, I do. Many more years.
I have one more comment. It's something I just interviewed a couple weeks ago. It's online now. Dr. Joe Vitale.
Yes, I know who he is.
Law of attraction teacher. He was in The Secret and everything. We had a wonderful conversation. Something about this 5-year-old thing. You had this experience at 5. He told me, and I don't think the people know this in general, when he grew up in Niles in Ohio, which is blue collar country, not far from where I grew up in Cleveland. And his dad put him to work at 5 years old on the railroad with him, with tools. He said, well, I was 5 years old. I thought it was fun. I'm going to work with daddy, and his dad actually put him to work at 5 years old. And you at 5 years old had the grief of losing your father. Wow. And this is hard. Me, I didn't have any. I can't even hardly remember anything from 5 years old, let alone that. And wow.
That's a good sign.
Yes, actually, yeah, it is. It took me a long time to realize that I was very fortunate in that way. Yeah. I am going to ask you this after, studying everything that you do. Now, you're classified as a metaphysician. What exactly is that? And also, you're a medical intuitive and a minister? Wow.
For me, metaphysics. Well, first of all, people love to talk about advanced metaphysics, and there's no such thing. All metaphysics is kindergarten. All of it. And here's my definition of metaphysics. You're God, I'm God, go.
Mm-hmm.
That's the whole thing. And if I actually can remember to treat you as though you are God, and me as though I'm God, then we can do anything. Anything. We can create anything. We can make whatever magic we want. But that perception of, you will like my word here, integrity, right? We love to use that word integrity as a moral word. I don't mean it that way. I mean integrity like integer, wholeness. An integer is a whole number. You are an integrity, Carl. You are a wholeness unto yourself. If I insist upon seeing you as a brokenness, not a wholeness, you will suffer. If I insist upon seeing me as a brokenness, I will suffer. But what if, no matter how perfect or not you or I are or are not, we were whole, as is? Now, that doesn't mean that there's not changing or growing or healing or learning that we have to do. That's what we're still, I'm not ascending out of my chair, are you? I'm sitting quite firmly in the chair, right? So, okay.
I think I floated up a couple inches a little while ago, but I'm back down.
That could be, right? For me, I still have things to do on this planet. That's why I'm still here.
Yeah.
But metaphysics literally means beyond the physical. And it is to find meaning in life beyond the physical. Like, oh, there's a guy in front of me I'm talking to on Zoom. So I'm talking to a virtual guy in front of a virtual galaxy, but he's wearing real glasses. And I know that because they have a little glare on them, so I can tell that they're real glasses, right? Well, all of those things have a meaning beyond the guy, the galaxy, and the glasses. Right? So, what that means to me is there is a spirit of wholeness in front of me. An entirety, a whole galaxy unto himself, right? That fits within a marvelous structure called the solar system. And this particular person has a lesson in this life. And part of that lesson is learning to see clearly. And we know that because he wears glasses. All that is the meaning behind the guy, the galaxy, and the glasses. I believe, like Viktor Frankl, the Holocaust survivor, right, psychiatrist, said human beings can live without many, many, many things. But one thing that we cannot live without is meaning. And I believe that. I believe that, and that is true for me. So metaphysics is about the meaning in life and learning how to tell your story so that it has meaning for you.
I love that you brought up Viktor Frankl. His book, The Meaning of Life, is a classic. And he survived the Holocaust, one of the very few people in a concentration camp that made it out because he stayed in the integrity of his meaning. And I also like that you talk about integrity. My own teaching and writing, I teach that there is the integrity that we need to live in based on eternal, universal law, unchanging laws of love and oneness. And when you do walk in alignment and resonance with that, the integrity of those eternal, unchanging universal laws, then you are whole. And I love that.
It's true. It's completely true. But I also think this. I think that our world has misapplied a great many arts and sciences. One of the arts and sciences that has misapplied, particularly in the West, is psychology. So we think because we can tell the story of our wounds, that explains why we are the way we are. And I don't believe that. I don't believe that at all. Sure, I had crummy things happen to me. So what do we do now? What am I going to do with that experience? One of the things that, because of losing Isaac, I tell women, because I had an incredible experience having a baby, is that having a baby is amazing. It was the best physical experience of my entire life. No one had to tell me to count. No one had to tell me to breathe. No one had to tell me to push. My body, so smart, my body. Bodies are smart, right? Bodies never lie. And the reason bodies never lie is that bodies can't lie. They are completely reliable. I knew exactly what to do to have that baby. Actually, and halfway through, the doctor said to me, "Are you sure you've never had a baby before?" I said, "Not in this lifetime. Go away. I'm busy."
I'm busy.
I'm busy. I have to push here, not have a chat, right? So I became a minister partly because I wanted to be able to answer those who were classically trained in religion and theology with the mysticism of metaphysics. So, for example, one of the things I learned in seminary is if you actually get the first 4 words of the Bible, you don't have to read the rest. The rest is commentary. So the first 4 words are, in the beginning, God, right? Go back to you're God, I'm God, go, right? It's the same thing. Oh, am I going to treat you as a wholeness in the beginning? Or am I going to tell myself and let you tell me all sorts of stories about your brokenness, right? Am I going to treat myself as a wholeness? In the beginning, God, because in the beginning, God is what actually conceived you and me. Now, God used a mom and a dad, and hopefully they had a good time while they were doing what they were doing, and pregnancy and all that. But in the beginning, you are God. And so am I. And so, like their politics or not, are the people you disagree with. And so are the people like this or not who don't look like you. And the people who disagree with you. And the people who think you're flaky woo weird, right? My husband has been known to introduce me to people as a whack job. His favorite whack job, mind you, but a whack job nonetheless. And that's probably true. I look at the world differently than most people. And the reason I do is because the truth of energy screams at me. I see everything as vibration. Everything. Now, okay, like that, don't like that. You can think I'm weird. I'm good with that. There are plenty of people I think are weird, and there are plenty of people I disagree with. Okay, good enough. That's what makes the world go round. But they are still wholenesses, and they are still made of God stuff.
Quantum science has actually verified what you're saying. You see everything as energy. The famous physicist David Bohm just says that there is no form. We're just congealed light, which is all energy and vibration.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that cool?
So you're not the whack job. Maybe everybody else is, and you're actually the one that sees the truth.
Which is what I say about persons who are on the autism spectrum or who are neurodivergent. Wait a minute, those are simply brains that work different than yours and mine. Just because they can't throw up the multiplication tables back at you does not mean that there is not wisdom there. Right? Temple Grandin is right. The world needs all kinds of brains. I'm here to tell you, Albert Einstein couldn't tie his shoes. Well, okay. But the person who tied his shoes probably couldn't have conceived of E equals MC squared either. So we're good. Someone does E equal MC squared and somebody else ties shoes. Right? It works. It works.
But they're all God.
Yes. At core and in expression. But so what's happened is we live on a planet that's based on polarity. And you know that because we have day and night. Just as simple as that, right? We don't have to go any further than that. Day and night. Okay. But what we've done, we humans, is we've taken polarity and made it polarization. Made one piece wrong and one piece right. Well, yeah, until the other piece is right and the other one's wrong. Hang in there, it'll change, My mother used to say that about Kool-Aid, right? She had children over a long period of time, and she'd say, when they first made Kool-Aid, the big thing was that it already had sugar in it, and it saved Mom time, right? Then a couple years later, they took the sugar out and said, oh, the big thing about Kool-Aid is that Mom can add how much sugar she wants, right? Then a couple of years later, they put the sugar back in and said, oh, saves Mom time. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I'm like, whoa, and sure enough, she was right. If you look at it, the history of Kool-Aid is they just kept taking the sugar out and putting it back in. Well, we revisit polarity all the time. The reason, and we need to learn to work with polarity, because working with polarity mandates that we choose. And that is the only thing besides the spark of life that God gave humankind. The ability to choose. Worse, even better, the curse of choosing, as Madeleine L'Engle used to say, the terrible gift of free will. Right? Yeah. And we have to choose. If you don't choose on this planet, now it might not be different. It might be different on other planets, but here, if you don't choose, nothing happens.
Well, who knew that Kool-Aid was a definition of polarity?
Interesting, right? You just have to wait. It'll change.
Well, tell me more about being an intuitive, and specifically a medical intuitive.
I knew a doctor, a really lovely Russian Jewish doctor, who one day called me on the phone and said, I'm sitting with a patient having a problem. I cannot figure it out. I said, what can't you figure out? And he said, I can't figure out what's really going on with her. Can you tune in and tell me? And I'm across town in Boston. I'm like 20 miles away from him, right? Well, I guess. I mean, I don't know. No one ever asked me that before. So I did it. And I explained in total layman's terms, because I am not a medical doctor, I'm a reverend doctor, what I saw happening in her small intestine.
Oh, okay.
And at the end of the phone call, he burst into laughter and he said to me, that's exactly it, you're right. And I was describing mitochondria that weren't working. But I didn't know that. I didn't know what mitochondria were.
Oh.
I simply was describing images I was seeing. Well, after a while, he started calling me again and again and again and asking me to diagnose patients to see if I would get it wrong eventually. Someone would come in with a stomach ache and I'd say, look at her left knee. And he'd say to me, what? And I'd say her stomach ache doesn't have anything to do with her stomach. It has to do with the abuse that's caught in her left knee. Ask her who made her go on her knees. And the patient would cry and my doctor friend would laugh and they would figure out what to do medically, right? Well, eventually he founded a medical center. And he said, come and be the head of spiritual and energy medicine. We're going to have 20 doctors. And when we get stuck, we're going to send them to you. Okay. Well, if human beings are a wholeness, my belief is that human beings are fourfold, not threefold. And I make that distinction quite deliberately. A lot of people will tell you that humans are spirit, soul, and body. And we all nod our heads and we go, aha, but most people can't define the difference between a spirit and a soul. They don't know what that is. Those are theological concepts. So I say that humans are body, heart, mind, and spirit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I say that it's 4 instead of 3 also is that we have 4 seasons. And so when you are born in one season or another, you are led by a particular sense. Are you led by your body? Are you led by your heart? Are you led by your mind? Are you led by your spirit? Interestingly, as an aside, Jesus of Nazareth had 4 names. First, he was Jesus of Nazareth, right? Just plain old Jesus. That was his personality, right? He became Jesus the Christ, right? Jesus the Christ. Christ was a title, like sensei. There was realized one, anointed one, right? But first he's Jesus and then he's the Christ, so that's 2. Then he's Jesus Christ, so that's 3. Then what happens in the book of Acts? He becomes Christ Jesus. Well, who the hell is that? Well, here's how it works. He starts out as a personality. He becomes his divine self, his wholeness. He puts those together, Jesus Christ, but then his personality is still leading. Jesus is coming first. What happens when he is crucified and resurrected? He becomes Christ Jesus. His divine self is leading. What we're looking for is Christ Carl, right? Christ Susan, right? So I started to talk to people about, at the medical center, about the 4 different aspects of self. What's hurt? Because 9 times out of 10, people arrive with bodily symptoms. I can't keep food down. let's say, right? And bodily symptoms aren't necessarily about bodies at all. They show up in bodies because bodies can't lie, right? But minds can lie, thoughts can lie. Oh my gosh, we are taught to make our thoughts lie to us, right? And those thoughts manipulate our feelings, so feelings can lie. But spirit and body can't lie. So how do we get to the truth of spirit, which is the ultimate wholeness of you, right? Expressed through your body. Well, we clean up whatever the muck is in your mind and your heart. Mm-hmm. And that's what I started to do. I started to tell people, okay, what's actually going on? Who's bugging you? Whose shoes do you want to throw up on that it's making you not eat, right? And it would turn out that they had a terrible relationship with a spouse or a parent or someone shaming them about eating or whatever it was. And I could have 50 people in the room have the same problem. I can't keep food down, right? And they would have 50 different reasons, configured differently. Sometimes it was emotional, sometimes it was mental, sometimes it was simply opinion, right? Oh, I'm too fat, right? Someone with, let's say, bulimia telling me they're too fat. And I'm looking at the person, the girl, like, what? Are you out of your treehouse, kiddo? I can see every bone in your face, right? But she can't see that because she's got a broken piece in her emotional self that won't let her even look at her body in a mirror and see what's there. That's insane. But we do it to ourselves all the time. So I started to help doctors understand that there was a spiritual, emotional, and psychological aspect to symptomology, which is one of the reasons I started working so intently with chakras. Because the chakras are actually that divine spark that God gives each one of us, the animating spark of life, right? When someone goes to medical school, Carl, they study 11 systems. Circulatory, skeletal, respiratory, those, right? But they're not taught to ask, what makes those systems work? What makes those systems go? For me, that's a divine spark. So the chakras are the divine spark, which is a spark of light, poof, right? Seen through a prism. Which is why chakras are expressed so often as rainbows, right? Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, rose, right? For me, 8 chakras, major chakras that go up the spine. Well, those are the energetic equivalents, like what Freudian would call the subconscious mind. But they remember everything, all your lifetimes, all your experiences, all your wounds, all your unfinished business, all your hurt. So if I learned I could teach people how to connect to their own chakra system, there's one rule about chakras, as far as I'm concerned, and it's the same rule as about music. You can hit middle C as many times as you want. Bam, 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 music, 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 right? Middle C, middle C, middle C. Mm-mm. That's not music. That's one note, right? It's like the root chakra is red. Red, 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 red. Not important, right? What's important is, how does it connect to orange, which is the next one? Chakras are like music. It's the relationships between them that make them work. So when someone, for example, has a judgment about the way they eat, right, enough so that it's turned into an ulcer, right, that judgment has to be unraveled before the ulcer will go anywhere. But if you don't know that there's a thought, judgment, right, I shouldn't eat, I don't deserve to eat, I'm too fat to eat. Really? I doubt it, but okay. That thought creates a feeling. The feeling is shame. or sadness, or guilt, or fear, or worry, or any of the ickies, right? I have a theory about feelings. There are only four. It only works in English, but mad, bad, sad, glad. The rest are intellectual variations, right?
Mad, sad, glad. Okay.
Right. Well, you may be mad, right? But you may say to me instead, "Oh, I'm so annoyed. Oh, I'm so irritated. Oh, I'm so frustrated. Oh, I resent that." Right? All those are just intellectual versions of the 3-year-old who is mad, damn it. Right? Good enough. Well, that 3-year-old usually gets mad. It lasts for no longer than 90 seconds, and then it's over because they tell the truth about it. But my frustrated self doesn't ever let herself get mad. It's just a slow, mean burn. Well, a slow, mean burn sounds like a really good reason to make an ulcer to me. Right?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, you have to get to the thought that made the feeling and track where it came from so that you can forgive at 3 levels. You forgive whatever incited the problem, right? For the other person, right? Well, forgiving the other person is usually this part of the job, right? Then you get to forgive yourself for letting it affect you so badly, right? But then you get to forgive God for letting it happen, which is the hardest part, right? But forgiveness is one of the most selfish acts in the world. I don't forgive you so that you feel better. I forgive you so that I don't suffer. Right?
Well, that's a good form of selfishness.
Indeed, it is. And necessary. Selfishness is not a bad thing unless it disincludes the rest of the world. But that's the disconnect, right? It doesn't matter to me whether I'm vaccinated or not because I don't care how that affects you. Well, I do care how it affects you, so I'm vaccinated. Right? Now, there are people who are not vaccinated because their immune systems are compromised and it wouldn't matter, right? Whether they were vaccinated or not. Those aren't people who are anti-vaxxers, except there are all these opinions and polarizations, and so it's tense. You know, it's like living in tug of war, right? Wait a minute, put the rope down. Let's find out why and where it's coming from and what the incredible fear has to be behind it. And how do I see you as whole, see you as God, whether you agree with me or you don't? I don't need you to agree with me.
You know, I really love your analogy that the chakras are like music. And I've had many guests on this show and events I've attended to where they're going to do energy chakra clearing. And as I know, it's important. But, you know, that brings me to, you know, I mentioned this in your introduction here that you have an 8-volume series that you wrote called Energy Integrity, one book for each chakra. How did you come about writing those and an entire book for each chakra?
Well, first of all, they're workbooks.
Workbooks, okay.
So they're not information books. So it's very important that you understand that because that's why they are physical books. They're not ebooks. You can't buy them as ebooks. They're only physical books because they take you through each chakra in 3 ways. How that chakra has been impacted by your past, how that chakra is impacting your present, and how that chakra can impact your future if you create what it holds. So what started to happen was in my private practice, I was taking people through this process of learning to heal from ailments that wouldn't heal, essentially. And I started recommending that people go buy origami paper in the colors of the chakras that they needed and put them up in front of their computer so that they looked at the colors, so that the colors in their own system balanced out. Now, one of the secrets to the chakra system, at least in my experience of it, is if you, for example, had a wound in your second chakra, which is by your belly button, and it's the chakra that's about your passions in life, it's orange. I wouldn't work in your second chakra. Usually that would be too tender. I would go to the chakra above it or the chakra below it. So I might tell you if we figured out that, I mean, like, here's a good story. You've probably heard this before. There was a guy who was from a family of doctors. Grandpa doctor, dad doctor, all older brother doctors. The youngest one wanted to be a sculptor. And everybody said to him, absolutely not. You're going to medical school. You're not ruining our record. The hell with you. So he went to medical school and he became a plastic surgeon. One of the world's top plastic surgeons. Well, what is plastic surgery?
Sculpture.
Right. The day after his father died, he went to work. He closed his practice. He bought a loft. He started sculpting. He made 5 times the amount of money as a sculptor as he did as a plastic surgeon, because his soul and his spirit were in it. And he knew that. Right? Well, during the years in which he was a plastic surgeon, his heart was broken. He was sad. He was longing for something the whole time. His passion had been squashed by power, essentially. Right? His family had overridden his passions. So I would set him to wear a yellow t-shirt every day for a month, or red, and I would say you do whichever one feels right, red or yellow, sleep in them, wash them every single day, because what we're going to do is we're going to bring your orange chakra, the middle one, back to life, because it had atrophied. So he had a scale, but he was missing a note. Ow. I mean, I suppose you can do that, but it makes no sense. It's the relationships between them that matter. And it works just as simply as if you have a dislocated shoulder, or lupus, or Epstein-Barr, or the awful diseases that have no cause and no cure. Right? I worked with someone who had multiple sclerosis, who couldn't get out of a wheelchair when I met her. When she was done with the work that she needed to do, she was playing tennis.
Wow.
And she still had multiple sclerosis. But she didn't have the symptoms of it because she had done the work to recognize her own wholeness. Right? That's half the problem in medicine, right? Oh, you have a blah. And if you're not given that blah thing, that diagnosis, right, you don't get an insurance code. And if you don't get an insurance code, it's not paid for. Oopsie. So here we are, dependent on diagnoses that have nothing to do with healing. Right? They have nothing to do with curing either. I mean, I have also worked with people who were dying of breast cancer and still died, but died peacefully. Died understanding, basically, that what they had been taught about themselves was that they were not worthy of nourishment. And so their breast tissue was damaged because of it. Right? I must give and give and give and give until it hurts. That's actually really not a very good definition of motherhood. Not really.
Wow, there's everything you're saying here. Gosh, I'm coming up with like 9 million questions. But even just diagnosis. I've read Dr. Sue Morter's book. Bioenergetics, but she talks about how if you receive a diagnosis, many people just latch onto it, and it's classic law of attraction. They say, "Well, I have MS." Well, then everything their fears are risen up and grow stronger, and the universe sends more of MS symptoms to them. And that if you can actually maybe get a diagnosis, but just okay, I'm putting that over here, and then I'm going to work on myself, and you know, true spirituality teaches.
Amen to that.
True spirituality teaches that ideas leave not their source. And the medical world focuses on the external symptoms instead of going right to the core of the source of the problem, which is, as we know, up here.
And that has come to mean that there is some kind of mental illness, like a psychosomatic problem, with your symptoms. It's actually not. It's an imbalance or an emphasis on something that needs not to be emphasized, right? I need to be thinner than anyone on the planet. I have actually heard a bulimic say. Really, no, you don't. You don't. You are trying to disappear yourself. Why do you wish to disappear? Right? No one had ever asked a question like that of this one girl, right? What do you mean disappear myself? I said, well, if you weigh any less, your internal systems are going to stop. You won't have enough animation to move your blood around because she couldn't move. She was emaciated, right? She couldn't see it. So we broke the hold of the ideas through using the energy of the chakras, which is why I wrote the workbooks. Because you know what? The reason the chakras aren't taught in medical schools, and I have spoken in medical schools to talk about chakras, and about 30% of the doctors think that I really am that whack job. And their eyeballs are dinging holes in the ceiling, right? And about 60% of them are like, really? Like, we know this energy stuff. Like, we've seen it. We understand. But we just didn't have the vocabulary to talk about it, right? Well, the reason it's not taught is because it ends up on the mystical end of a spectrum. Like somehow mystery can't be included in medicine. Oh, please. You could have 50 people in the room with COVID. Everybody knows that COVID is a virus, right? They all have it for a different reason. Every single one of them. Because human beings are wired individually. There's a reason, for that phrase, special snowflakes. It's because there are no two snowflakes alike. Right?
Yeah. Well, we are talking to Dr. Susan Corso. I mean, this has just been a phenomenal conversation. I mean, time is just flying by here. So, we'll wind up here in a little bit. But, I mean, this is just an incredible conversation. I'm really curious because I asked this a while ago about being a medical intuitive. I'm just really curious. When that doctor called you and asked you to see if you could intuit what was really wrong, when you do that and you're intuiting on somebody 20 miles away from you physically, is it you actually see energy or feel it or all of the above?
You're gonna laugh at me, Carl. I imagine a gingerbread man.
Yeah.
Well, right, and a gingerbread man has, 2 arms and 2 legs, and it's pretty like a 5-year-old could draw a gingerbread man, right? I'm not doing anatomically correct. This is not Leonardo by any stretch, right? And I say, okay, show me, and show me yields an energetic signature that would look like an aura around the person, and the places, and then I turn the gingerbread man like a mannequin, like they're 3-dimensional, right? And I watch, And the places where there's illness, the places where there's imbalance, the places where there's misthinking, right? Wrong thinking is too mean, right? There's a misjudgment.
Mm-hmm.
Appear to me like muddy puddles. So when I look at you and I see your aura, I see clean colors, right? And the chakras themselves are concentrated color in the center that dissipates as they become three-dimensional spheres. So it's a little lighter on the outside and more intense on the inside. But if there's illness, I see a shadow, or I see a vibration that's shaky, or I see, and it's not see like I'm looking at you and seeing you. It's a feeling about someone's aura. So I might ask questions. If someone were asking me, I might say, okay. And you should know that I'm not snooping on your aura. I don't look at people that way unless I'm invited to. I feel very strongly about that. Unless it's a life or death situation, like if there's an emergency. But because it's because if I actually carried around all the information that I could, I wouldn't be able to lift my head up, right? There'd be too much. So then I might say, there's a problem in the digestive system, and I'll talk medical language, right? But I can't tell if it's above the waist or below the waist. So if it's because gingerbread men don't have waists, right? So if it's above the waist, it's going to be a stomach esophageal problem. And if it's below the waist, it's going to be an intestinal problem. And the patient might say, oh, well, the pain is below my waist. Well, then I will look lower and toward the intestines, right? Because the small intestine is hundreds or tens of feet long, right? What's this? What's that? Is it the appendix? Is it like, does the person have celiac? Is it through the whole system, or is there a tumor? Is there a cyst? Is there a fibroid? Is there, so, I know enough about physical bodies to get in trouble. And many people have asked me why I wouldn't go to medical school and become a doctor. And I say I am a doctor, thanks. Reverend doctor's good enough for me. And I have no urge to learn about the mechanics of bodies, right? So I see it, and I start to ask questions back. And I'll say things like this has happened to me, where I've said to a woman, you only have the pain every other month, right? And she'll say, how could you possibly know that? Well, because it's an ovary, and the problem is happening when your ovary is releasing an ovum, and they only release every other month for me. So I know that ovaries do that. So if I see it in an ovary, I know the pain is only every other month, unless it's complicated by more cysts or a bladder infection or cancer, or, right? So that's how I do it. With gingerbread men.
I love it, a whole new technique. So one last question too, and this is kind of curious personally. You have said that particular colors coordinate with each chakra, like root is red. Is it, if a person is attracted to particular colors, like ever since I've been a young kid, I'm attracted to like red, orange, and yellow. Does that mean anything as far as, just me with my energy systems? Are they dominant? Are those chakras dominant?
No, probably not. Probably what they are is a little bit hungry.
Okay.
Because generally speaking, we are run by our lower chakras, but we choose to be run by our upper chakras, right? So because of the way we are educated in the West, we are drawn to our fifth chakra, our sixth chakra, information processing, wisdom, that kind of stuff. So our lower chakras tend to be neglected.
See what you're saying, yeah.
Right? So those lower chakras, first of all, is where usually there's much more problem in lower chakras than upper chakras across the population generally. But what it is your spirit is so smart that you have been drawn to balancing out your own energy by wearing red, orange, or yellow, or having red, orange, or yellow within your visual field, right? So if you were going through a period of a lot of exhaustion, for example, a lot of people are in exhaustion right now because of COVID, and the convoluted messaging that we've all suffered from over all these years. And I'm saying to people, yeah, wear red, wear red, wear red, wear red, because it will ground you, it will connect you here. If you are an omnivore, eat beef. Get yourself here and grounded, right? When your root chakra's here, you can go sailing around the galaxy all you like and it's safe. But if you're not rooted here because you're half escaping, or if you don't have your own passions, and the third chakra, which is at your solar plexus, is sort of egg yolk yellow, right? The chakra is about power. So if you feel disempowered, put yellow somewhere. I don't care if you cut out a picture of a fried egg and stick it on your computer monitor. Seriously. Just to remind yourself that part of your purpose here is to have your own power. Not power over, usually power with, but that's another lesson.
Wow, this is awesome. Thank you for that. That is just amazing. I don't know. I might have to have you back on the show because I got a lot more questions.
Oh, I would love to.
We didn't even get around to talking about your Ampersand Society and authoring of fiction and metaphysical romance novels and stuff. And how can people find out more about you and tell us about your website, iAmpersand?
Well, let's do it this way. What I'd like to do is offer your listeners a gift. And this is yes, this is a landing page, but no, you don't have to put your email address in if you don't want to. This is a free gift for real. Go to chakras.susancorso.com. And I'm sure Carl would put that in the show notes for us. chakras.susancorso.com. And there are 2 free downloads. They are what I call the less mores, and it is a way to begin to work with the chakra system right now. What you do less of and what you do more of, right? So for your red chakra, the less more is complaining less and thanking more. So if you notice that you're complaining a lot, switch it and start being thankful and start talking about thanks, right? If you notice that you are complaining, pay attention to why you're complaining. You might need red. You might need to eat an apple. You might need strawberries. You might, think about, because the colors around you heal you, right? So chakras.susancorso.com. Now I will tell you about the Ampersand Society because it's based on a very simple notion. Many, many years ago, I started to say to people, the most important word in every language is and. And people would say to me, what? And? And my answer was yes. Because if you use and, every time you want to say or, everybody's included. And that's the point. We're all here on this planet together. And as my friend Melissa, the astrologer, says, there's no planet B.
I like that. I've seen that before.
Right? There's no planet B, right? We all have to consider everyone in order to go forward and create the world that we want. No exceptions.
Well, thank you, Dr. Susan Corso, and we love having you on the show.
Thank you. It was great fun. I love talking to you. Please, if it would be helpful, I'd be happy to come back.
Yeah, okay, we'll talk about that soon. And thank you again. Namaste, my friend. Namaste.
Be well, Carl.
This has been another episode of World Awakenings, the fast track to enlightenment with host Carl Gruber, a certified law of attraction life coach. We welcome you to tune in to each and every episode of World Awakenings as we open your mind, your heart, and your eyes to the fact that the world's population is now, more than ever, awakening to the truth of all things spiritual, metaphysical, and enlightening, and just how much they play an all-important role in our moment-to-moment daily life. Much love and light to you, my friend, and thank you for tuning into World Awakenings.